He's even younger. So there's just so many
That
things that
perspective.
can happen. Like you could get, we know they're probably going to be drinking at college. So it's
Well,
like you're
yes.
worried about being safe, like MIPs, getting in trouble. Like you have so much more of a window of time where you're not like the drinking age or you're not 18 and you're doing all these things. But then on the flip side of it, okay, he's going to be the oldest kid, most likely, or one of the oldest kids in his class. He's driving first. He's 18, his senior year of high school.
Yeah.
So you have more adult problems that you could get into because you are an adult, you are 18. But at the same time, he'll be, hopefully, and then, boys are more immature, they need more time. So it's like, okay, he's just going to have more time to, grow up a little bit, get that maturity, and then go into adulthood ready. Not like us, where we were like these little babies that were not ready for the wild,
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a brand new episode of She's Got It Together. I'm your host, Jessica.
And I'm Samantha. Each week, we peel back the curtain on what it really looks like to have it together.
From the messy moments to the milestones, we're here to share it all.
So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's dive into today's topic.
Thanks for joining us for part 2 of learning when to start and why. We're going to dive right in where we left off last week. I definitely think that parents need to be the advocates, though. They need to be
for sure
more in tune, because I know that this was a huge fault of mine with Hayden and Taylor. I was not in tune with Taylor until I found out the issue.
Yeah.
And same with Hayden. She struggled in math, not so much reading. Well, she did have reading in the earlier days, but it was almost kind of just pushed to the side because I'm like, oh, she'll eventually get it, or she's doing well enough. She's obviously they're not, failing her.
She's just not quite ready. Enough. She'll get there. And
there's so many excuses.
Right. That's the thing too, though. I think as a parent now and you saying that is really nice because I think a lot of pressure is put on the teacher to figure out figure out everything that's going wrong with your kid's development or whatever, but really it's a team effort from the parents and the teacher, and we can do our best, but you also have to remember that's not our only kid in the room. Most people have 20, 30 kids in the room. Right. So it's we do our best with what we have, but then you as the parent have to supplement. That's your child, your priority. You should also be working with them at home and being able to see where they're at home, talk to the teacher, go to the conference, make it a priority, find out how your kid is doing, ask questions, and not just academically, socially. Yeah. They really, you also want to, because I think that gets put on the back burner because most parents are just worried about what their kid knows. Do they know their ABCs? Do they know math? Can they do this? So it's the social part though too is if they can't sit at a circle time for 30 minutes, that's what it is in kindergarten now. Right. Then
be able to, pay attention.
They need to build that stamina to be able to pay attention. Yeah. Engage with what the book and the questions and being able to, just be able to sit for a certain amount of time, which you don't, it's an attention span. And for kids, that's hard work to sit and be fully concentrated on what a teacher is saying, being able to engage and answer questions, and then being able to even just retain that information and not looking off in the distance or playing with the carpet. And kids will do that and still be listening. Oh my gosh, yeah. But kids can still do that and listen. So I never got on kids too much unless they were really bothering someone, because you can be listening and have to fidget and stuff like that. But it's there are kids that would they get up and will want to walk around and play because the little imagination station kitchen is over here. Right. No, you can't do that. It's not playtime yet. You have to sit down. So it's giving your kids a routine and a schedule is important, because then once they get to school, they are okay, following rules and being able to understand your daily schedule. You get to school, we have breakfast, then we have circle time, then we have our centers, then you have outside time. There's a whole daily schedule that they have to get to. And it's if they're not ready and can't get through that, they're going to struggle more in the next grade because, again, like
it's only going to get tougher.
It's getting harder. And then like socially, like being able to navigate friendships and problems and solving those problems, like that's a whole thing that they learn at school that I think parents forget about because taking turns, I want that, but you have it in your hand. I'm just going to grab it. You can't do that. Like, so they teach, like we teach them like how to ask for things, how to take turns, solving problems, get a timer, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like there's so many things, but it's like, if those things aren't on a level where they should be meeting, it's going to be harder the next year because kids are going to be meeting those expectations. If they're not, they're expected to be. So then like that kindergarten teacher expects this kid to already know how to take turns and share and all this stuff. And then when they're not doing that, it's making that teacher focus on them.
It slows down the whole class.
And it slows down the whole class. And granted, not every kid can meet every expectation. And that's why we are teachers and we accommodate. But that also is another reason why I'm so like, Bo's going to young fives. Because developmentally, he's going to be behind a lot of the kids just because of his age. Yeah. Not because there's anything wrong. Well, but then again, you also put other things like you could need, you know, speech. You could need other things. And that's just like, you don't even know. This is the age where you're like, you're finding out. Like,
out, you figure out where your needs are. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, thinking about it, so like the age of when you graduate, I mean, so you guys were 17, I was 18, but in my class, there was 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that graduated that year.
That's crazy.
Like, I mean,
well, kids would get held back a lot more, I feel like, because they needed young fives and they didn't have it.
Yeah.
And so they would get held back a grade. Or most kids, like, I feel like didn't get held back at my time that much. They just kind of like pushed them through. Or if they got held back, we didn't really know about it. But there was nobody in my class that I recall that was older than 18. Or maybe
I mean, I know there was a lot of kids earlier, like when I was there, that were held back. It was pretty common to get held back, I feel like, then. Because, I mean, I wouldn't think more than once, but like I said, I can think of 2 people right off the top of my head that were 20 when they graduated. They had just turned 20, but they were still 20.
That's old, it seems like. Especially when I was 17. Yeah.
Right. Like, so think about that. That's like that. And
that's like a 3-year age gap.
And at a time when you think of, it's very different, you know, maturity and, you know, all of that.
Well, you're a year away from drinking legally when you graduate high school at 20. And then you have a 17-year-old who's literally like going to go all the way through college barely being able to drink legally. So it's like, when you think about it that way, like my experience, it was literally like we were in college and we were like, okay, let's just hope we make it through without getting an MIP, you know, or getting in trouble. Yeah. And it's like, I feel like I'm making us sound like lushes, but seriously, it's just like, you know, you're out with your friends and you go to, you know, it was hard when your friends would be able to go and get into bars and you couldn't. Yeah. So then it's like, unless there was like a house party, you couldn't go, you know? Yeah. It's like, I did have a fake ID for a moment, but I was almost like,
funny because that's something I never had. I used a couple other folks' IDs, but I never had like my own fake ID.
Well, in a college setting, it's a little easier to get into a bar, I think, with a fake ID rather than like, you know, in our hometown that's pretty small and people know who you are and they know people's names. And it's just like, it's a little harder to do that, I think. But at college, it's just like there's like so many different. There were certain bars that you could get into and certain bars that you couldn't get into.
You had like the tribal police. You had
they didn't really do anything.
Police, and then like state wasn't the state. Like they're all there.
Well, it was like Central's like campus police, and then it was the like regular, you know, like just like Mount Pleasant police, and then there was the tribal police. But we didn't really have issues with that. They kind of did their own thing.
But I mean, it was just like you had all those different ones there. Well, most places don't have the extra.
Well, right. Because you got campus security, you got the campus stuff, and then just regular. But I mean, we were at parties that would get busted, and then they're just like, everybody leave because they were so big, unless they really wanted to be.
Forever for them to like.
And sometimes, though, it just depends on the cops, though, because some will literally like grab anybody they can get coming out of the party and give them an MIP. But then other times, like, it was like, just leave, you know, or
don't do it again.
There was one time we were at my friend's apartment and there was like maybe 6 of us there, but this kid was kind of being like an idiot and just like bouncing a basketball against the wall, and there's neighbors.
Right.
So then they called the cops, and then a cop, all of a sudden, I was like literally like drinking a beer, and I put my beer down, and there's a cop standing right in the door. And I'm like, there's nowhere you can go. There's 6 of us in here. You can't run anywhere. So then there's nowhere to go. He was blocking the door. Like, you can't go anywhere. And there's like, he can clearly see you. There's like 6 people in this apartment. And so then they like asked everybody their age, and of course, like, we told the truth. We were 19.
I think that's the best part, is to tell the best tip. You just tell the truth.
Yeah, and I think like if we all would have like lied, like, he obviously knew we'd give me your ID,
right.
like
right.
you know.
Right.
But it's like, he's like, at that point in college, it was like cool to put like all your empty not beer bottles, but like vodka bottles or Jaeger bottles like up above your cabinets. And so at this apartment, there was a bunch of like Jaeger bottles. He's like, are those full? And then they like, kid laughed. He's like, no, they're empty. He's like, okay, well, you need to dump out anything that you have here. And so he was like, I want to make sure there's nothing in those bottles up there. We're like, they're empty. Like, they're, you know. So then I think somebody had just bought like a case of beer, so they had to dump all of it out.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, we weren't even, like, drunk or anything because we just started drinking, but, God.
However you were.
I remember I was just terrified. I was like, this is the closest I've been to
my life is over.
Getting in trouble. Like, I was like, I've never been, like, caught with this little of people in an apartment. So I was like, oh, God, normally I'd be at, like, a party and you could, like, go out the back or, like, something.
Oh, that's funny.
But we didn't have too much trouble with that. We were pretty good for the most part. But, I mean, I just think of Bo doing all this stuff now.
Right.
So I'd rather him be older. Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God, this is why I want them to be older. Yeah. I mean, because Taylor was a July birthday. We started her early, which I think was a mistake just because of her maturity and her...
In hindsight, though, but you had no idea she was going to be struggling.
No, I didn't.
You know, I mean, so it's hard to make that decision. Well, it's hard to make that decision when your kid is 4 years old and you have no idea. Right. I mean, you might have some idea, but you really don't know that if they're going to have.
I had no idea with Taylor.
They're not going to have. That's the thing. You just don't know, and you just hope that you're making the right decision. And if they seem ready and you send them, like, fine, but you don't know they're going to struggle with reading or math or whatever in a year or two. Like, that's what's hard. And that also is why it's like, it's okay if, and I know people like get hung up on this like held back thing, and it's a bad thing. And like young fives means like they're not ready and you're holding them back. But you know what? You're doing them a favor, because now, like, they're going to be so ready. They'll be a leader in the classroom. They're not going to be behind. They'll be, like, thriving in school. And if there is something that they need extra help with, you have time. Like, you have time to figure it out. You have time to, like, work on that skill. It's like you're not scrambling to try and, like, get them caught up because they went too early, you know?
And even holding them back once they're in elementary, we held Taylor back. It was the best decision we could have made. She is in a much better place with a group of kids that are more her maturity level. And I mean, on top of, you know, her educational level, because she is just a little bit, you know, she's behind with reading and things like that. But pushing her along to be in the grade that we kind of wanted her to be in was it was like devastating for her, because she wasn't learning and she was always feeling dumb just because she couldn't.
Well, that's the other thing
happening.
They're like losing like self-confidence, and they don't feel like confident in school or themselves, or they're like what they're doing, and like that's not fun either.
She's back to hiding.
It's like that makes school hard and unenjoyable, and you don't want them to be like dreading going to school. You want them to enjoy learning in school. So when you can have the opportunity to like be able to help them do that more than.
And, you know, holding her back mid-year, which is when we ended up doing it, was not as nearly as dramatic as I thought it was going to be. I mean,
I feel like as parents, like, you always think the worst, because
we build it up as this.
You build it up, and then kids are so resilient that you're just like, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought. But
I mean, as long as
honestly,
you're
like you just
open,
feel like, am I making the right choice? Am I doing the right thing? Like, I don't know.
Afraid of breaking her.
Yeah, it's like, I'm just trying my best here. Just trying my best.
But yeah, it was definitely a great decision, even though we fought it because we just did not want her to be in a different grade, with her friends, because she's got,
Well, that's what's hard too. If you go up with, like, especially like if you start with your schoolmates, like we did, like everybody we knew in kindergarten, we went through school with pretty much up until middle school, and then even like most of them were still in your same middle school, high school. So it's like, I think about that with Bo, because like we don't have like our like permanent home yet that we know we want to live in. So it's like, okay, if we are still at this house and he starts school, then he's going to start making friends, and then we'll potentially move out of this school district, which means he's going to start at a new school. So it's like we're almost like, okay, can we try and figure out at least like what school we want him to go to and where we want to end up, and then maybe we can do school of choice. Okay. So it's literally just like you're trying to like do the best you can and make it as easy as possible for your kid to enjoy school. And then of course there's going to be hiccups. Like you're going to be like, it's not going to be perfect, but you just got to do the best you can.
Even Hayden was resilient moving to, she left middle school she left elementary, went to a new middle school. So the kids didn't follow with her. And then the same, continued on to high school that was different than where she originally would have gone.
Right.
So,
well, and I feel like with high school too, it's like you can have friends in middle school and then you don't even see them in high school because you have different teachers, different classes. Like it's a whole different thing. But it's nice if, like, I feel like I always think back to, like, Sid and I as twins. We did everything together. It was so easy for us because you had someone to sit with at lunch every day. Except for high school. Like, we were in different lunches. But it's like you always had, like, that comfort of someone. But I remember, like, if she was sick that day, I didn't want to go to school.
Right.
I would be kind of scared to go by myself.
Yeah.
I would have to sit. I remember at the beginning of middle school in 6th grade, like, we didn't know a lot of people. All of our, like, really good friends from elementary school moved to different schools. Like Kirsten left and went to North Carolina. Paige went to another school in a different city. And I'm like, all of our like good core friends like left. And so then we kind of had to start over at middle school. No. And then, I feel like middle school, like some people, like you're like, okay, I'm going to make new friends. Like there's different kids here kind of thing. Yeah. You might not be hanging out with the same people that you hung out with in elementary school. Like I feel like that summer can be like a big transition sometimes. And then you're in different classes. You have different teachers. Like you're not around them, or you have different lunches. Like it's not like, oh, all the 5th graders have lunch here. Right. But in 6th grade, it's like you could have 3 different lunches or whatever. Right. But I just remember one day she was sick. She didn't come. It was like probably the first little bit of school. We didn't have any like really, really good friends yet. And I was sitting by myself at lunch and I'm just like, oh my God, I don't even want to be here right now. Like, this is so embarrassing. I was sitting by myself at this table. And then my friend Megan that I knew from like our neighborhood came over and was like, do you want to come sit with us? And I'm like, sure. And then Sid was gone the next day. And then, she came over and she's like, you can come back and sit with us. I'm like, okay. Like, I was like, I didn't want to like impose on your little group, because like, it's so cliquey kind of in middle school. Yeah. But, and then also like, then it's just awkward. And then when you don't have your like security blanket sister there, you're just like, God, what do I do? I remember they put us in different like home rooms. So we didn't have all the same classes. And so like, I was like, oh, okay. I gotta make friends with these people because she's not here. Yeah. It's like, okay. But it actually ended up being great because we both made friends in different classrooms and then we all became friends and we needed to. And it was good. But at the same time, you're just like terrified. Because you're like, I'm by myself now. What do I do?
Regular old, Joe. I know. Has to go by themselves every day.
Well, that's what it's as I'm pregnant, I have all of these like past like thoughts coming to like my head. It's so weird. So I literally was like, oh my gosh, Bo is not going to have anybody to do this with. Yeah. Like, he doesn't have, like, and now I understand why, like, best friends are so important to people. Yeah. Because I always had Sid there as my best friend. And, of course, I had my, like, friends that were my best friends, but it was different because I had her.
Yeah, you know? Sid was never going anywhere, you know?
Right. And it's like, I understand now why people are so close with those friends that they consider, like, sisters, because it's like, that's their same kind of bond. That's their security. And I'm like, I had that with Sid from day one, so I didn't necessarily need that in anybody else.
You never had to find it.
So I'm like, I have my very, very good best friends that I don't know what I would do without now. But it's like, when you're that young, you're just like, okay, this is great, but now I got to do this by myself. And now, like I said, I think of Bo having to go out and do all those same things, and he doesn't have, like, that security blanket like I had. Just sitting on the dang bus, I would sit with her. Yeah. You know how much anxiety it is to, like, sit down next to somebody on the bus?
Any place that's not, like, you know, planned, or you have assigned seating, you have to make a choice.
Because people, like, let's be real, kids can be mean and be like, you can't sit here, you know, like, or put their book bag. I know, that's what I mean. I'm like, you just don't know who's gonna, like, get rubbed the wrong way, or, like, if your kid's gonna get a target on their back for whatever reason. It's just like, you want to do everything in your power to, like, protect them. Another reason why I'm like, you don't need to go to school. Honestly, I was like, oh, God, no, I don't want to be pregnant with twins. Now I'm like, you know what? Probably would have been nice, at least for the twins. They would have had each other.
That's funny. Oh, my gosh.
But I think it's just, you got to do what you got to do. Like, just kind of go off of, like, your kid's personality, how they are, your comfortability in sending them to school or not sending them to school earlier. The thing is, like, you don't necessarily have to put them in a, like, rigid program. You can go out and find, like, weekly programs that you can do and take your kids some days, and when they're having a fit one day and you don't make it, it's not a big deal. But, you know, just getting them out socially with other kids their own age is great. They don't necessarily have to be in school to do that, but just the exposure is nice, I guess. At least from a teacher standpoint, because I could always tell the kids that have gone to school or done some kind of program, or the ones that didn't.
I bet you could.
And there's nothing wrong with either one of them, but you can just tell the kids that have had some schooling and the ones that haven't. Or on the other flip side, you can tell kids that have been, you know, worked with by their parents.
Yeah.
Or gone to school. I shouldn't say just gone to school, but the social aspects, you can tell more if they've gone to school.
Versus, you know,
and they just use, like, language, like school language more. Like, you know, it's just like, eyes on me, or use your words, or can I be the line leader? Like, can I be the line leader? You know, it's just so like, funny. You can tell, like, but I mean, I think you just have to decide what's best for you and your family in that moment. And then, honestly, like, give it a try. If it doesn't work, it's fine. But eventually they are going to have to go to kindergarten, because it's illegal not to send your kid to kindergarten unless you're homeschooling.
Right. You're going to have to let them fly the coop and put them
I had somebody call in, because in the summers, like, I would work in, like, our intake office sometimes, and I had a dad, presumably, call in for his daughter and said, hey, so there's a school right across the street from me. Like, do you think I could send my daughter there? And I'm like, oh, well, let me just fill out, what's her age, and, like, what, do you know the name of the school or your address? And I can, like, look it up. And then he's like, oh, she's 6. She just turned 6. And I'm like, okay. I was like, well, for our program, she's too old, but have you registered her for kindergarten? He's like, well, no. I'm like, she should be in kindergarten, sir, not pre-K. This is for 4 and turning 5-year-olds, you know. And then he's like, oh, well, she just turned 6. And I'm like, well, she should be going to kindergarten. So why don't you, he gave me his address, and I could look up the school. And I'm like, go in there and say you need to register your kid for school.
Walk in.
And then they'll tell you, like, more and where to go, because he was just like, oh yeah, I think she should be in school now. And I'm just like, yes, like she probably could have gone last year. Luckily he didn't wait any longer, but it's like, and this is, that's like, she was 6. I mean, and I'm like, she could be going into kindergarten that's what I mean. It's like, sometimes, like, you just they might not
know.
know. Or
you weren't given this manual. You're just expected to
know.
Well,
that's the thing. And then if you don't enroll your kid in like a pre-K or something, or you don't
drive by a school with a sign,
right,
register
or you
now.
move, because that's the thing. Like they're supposed to send out like
the flyers,
and then you go to the school that's on there. But sometimes there's a school directly across the street from you, but that's not your school. Like based on like county lines and
it
stuff.
Dawned on him that might be something good for my daughter.
Right. But it's just like, unless you get that card in the mail or you've gone to pre-K and you know that the kindergarten roundup's coming or something because your teacher has told you, it's like, you don't know. And it's there's a lot of people too that like, they just come from another country. They don't know.
Right.
And then they don't know what kindergarten roundup is. They don't know that you have to go register your kid at that school. Like, just, there's just so many things and ways that you can, like, your kids can, like, fall through the cracks. And, And, I mean, there's only so much you can do. But, I mean, at least it was recognized that she should probably go to school. So I'm glad that he found our number and called. But I know. I'm like, good for you. It's like, we figured this out. Gosh.
Oh my goodness.
But I don't know. Kids are fine going to school or being home with you as long as, you just got to feed that brain, I guess.
Yeah, they're sponges. They're sponges
they
at
are.
that age, so.
Well, that's the thing. Like 3 and up, like they can just soak it all in. If you want them to learn like another language or something, like I swear they're like sponges at that age. They can learn so much. I had a couple kids that knew like 2 or 3 languages, and
I've always somewhat been against that because it's like, again, you're forgetting to let them be kids. I mean, I know it's a great time for them to like absorb all of this, but I just feel like
I think a lot of them though were dual language learners anyway.
Well, that could be if it naturally
so like they had their home language, then they learn English, and then sometimes they'll have them learn another language just because they pick it up so easily.
Right.
But I mean, if your primary language is English and you want them to know like Spanish and like French or something, like the thing that I've noticed too, like with dual language learners, is like there's so many different things in languages, like slang, or they don't have like the plural sound, and it gets kids confused.
Well, our language is just
ours makes no sense. But it's like kids can get confused. They just get confused that like this means this in this language, this means this in this language, or like these 2 letters are this way and that way. But
I'm saying this word. I don't know what language it's in, but I'm saying this word.
Well, and then like like THE spells the, but like the doesn't sound like, you can't sound out certain words. It's a sight word.
They're sight
so
words.
Then like that confuses the heck out of kids too. So that would be like a memorization word, because you can't sound it out.
Sight words in school. I don't ever remember.
We did.
It's been a long time, so maybe we did.
But that's the thing. Like, there are certain things that you want your kids to memorize, certain things that they shouldn't memorize. I mean,
we're so bossy.
And you wonder why parents don't want to do anything. It's like, I don't know if I'm teaching them right. I don't know. It's a toss-up, really.
Oh, shoot. Goodness. Well, I think whatever we do is probably good.
Yeah, doing something is better than nothing.
I would say, but doing something is probably important.
And then just making the best decisions for your family is all you can do.
Yep, that's about it. Thanks for joining us today on She's Got It Together. It's been a real journey sharing and laughing with you all.
We hope you're walking away with a smile on your face and a bit more confidence in your step.
Remember, you're not alone in this crazy ride called life. We're all in this together, one day at a time.
Don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and of course, share this podcast with all the incredible women in your life.
Join us next week for more stories, more laughs, and more real talk.
Until then, keep embracing your unique journey and remember, you've got it together more than you think.